The megacity pulsed with life as dusk settled over its sprawling expanse. Neon signs flickered, their shifting hues casting a surreal glow over the labyrinthine streets below. The air was thick with the scent of rain on hot asphalt, mingled with the smoky aroma of grilled street food and the ever-present undertone of engine oil and ozone. Above, a patchwork of holographic advertisements and tangled power lines crisscrossed the sky, obscuring the first stars that dared to pierce the urban canopy. Don Q navigated the crowded avenues with a determined stride, the weight of his armor a familiar burden. His patched-together cybernetic suit clinked softly with each step, a symphony of metal and worn servos. The visor of his helmet glowed faintly, Rocinante's interface projecting a delicate lattice of data over his field of vision. Lines of code scrolled along the periphery, while subtle prompts highlighted points of interest in the bustling marketplace he found himself in. Rocinante, Don Q addressed his ever-faithful companion. Scan for any signs of Gaia's influence in this sector. Scanning, Rocinante replied in a measured tone. Data streams indicate standard commercial activity. No immediate anomalies detected. Don Q's gaze swept over the myriad stalls and vendors that lined the street. Hawkers called out to passers-by, their voices competing with the electronic hum of the city. Holographic displays advertised everything from illicit cybernetic enhancements to bootleg neural software. The scent of spices and frying meats wafted from food carts, while the sharp tang of solder and burnt circuitry emanated from open-air tech repair booths. He paused beside a stall displaying an array of outdated implants, their exposed wiring and blinking lights reminiscent of relics from a bygone era. The merchant, a wiry man with augmented eyes that glowed an unnatural green, eyed Don Q warily before deciding better than to engage. All is not as it seems, Don Q murmured. Gaia's tendrils reach even into the hearts of the unsuspecting. Clarification requested, Rocinante chimed. Merely an observation, my friend, Don Q replied. We must remain vigilant. As he moved deeper into the market, the crowd thickened. People of all walks of life jostled for space, street kids with patched clothes and quick fingers, corporate drones in their crisp attire, and shadowy figures whose eyes darted nervously beneath the brims of their hats. The cacophony of voices, music, and the occasional burst of static from malfunctioning devices created a tapestry of sound that was at once chaotic and oddly harmonious. Amidst this sea of faces was Sanchō Panzer. She leaned casually against a graffiti-laden wall at the edge of a narrow alleyway, the dim light casting sharp angles across her features. Her dark hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail, a few rebellious strands framing her sharp, attentive eyes. She wore a jacket adorned with an array of patches and pins, its sleeves rolled up to reveal cybernetic enhancements that ran the length of her forearms, sleek, functional, and unobtrusive. In her hands she flipped a small data shard, the metal catching the light as it spun between her fingers. Her gaze was fixed on a group of men huddled a short distance away, their conversation low and guarded. Sanchō had been negotiating a deal, a simple exchange of information for credits. Easy work, or so she'd thought. Look, Panzer, one of the men snarled, his voice thick with impatience. Our employer doesn't appreciate delays. Sanchō smirked, her tone light. And I don't appreciate being rushed. Quality takes time, you know. Unless you want corrupted data. The man scowled. But before he could retort, a commotion erupted nearby. The crowd parted as Don Q strode into view, his armor catching the neon glow in a kaleidoscope of reflections. Whispers rippled through the onlookers, a mix of amusement, confusion, and mild alarm. Is that a cosplayer? someone muttered. Must be one of those street performers, another speculated. Sanchō raised an eyebrow, her attention drawn to the armored figure. Well, that's something you don't see every day, she mused. Don Q's focus was elsewhere. His visor had picked up on a signal, a low-frequency transmission he interpreted as a clandestine communication between agents of Gaia. Unbeknownst to him, it was merely the encrypted chatter of Sancho's would-be clients. Rocinante, confirm the source of that transmission, he ordered. Source identified, the AI replied. Transmission originates from individuals approximately 20 meters ahead. Don Q's eyes zeroed in on the group near Sanchō. Gaia's emissaries, he declared under his breath, up to their nefarious deeds. Without hesitation, he advanced toward them, his coat billowing slightly in the artificial breeze generated by nearby ventilation units. The men noticed his approach, their expressions shifting from annoyance to wariness. What's this now? One of them muttered, his hand inching toward the concealed weapon at his waist. Halt, agents of tyranny, Don Q proclaimed, his voice carrying over the din of the market. Cease your machinations and surrender. Sanchō watched with a mix of incredulity and amusement. Oh, this should be good, she whispered to herself. The lead man sneered. Who the hell are you supposed to be? Don Q stood tall, planting his lance firmly on the ground. I am the Knight of Cydonia, champion of the downtrodden, and foe to those who would oppress the innocent. The crowd began to circle, eager for a spectacle. Phones and ocular implants captured the scene, streams already uploading to various networks. Listen, Tin Man, the lead man growled. This doesn't concern you. Walk away. Don Q shook his head. I cannot stand idle while Gaia's minions plot against the people. One of the men chuckled darkly. This guy's lost it. Sanchō decided to intervene. Stepping forward, she placed herself between Don Q and the group. All right, gentlemen, let's all take a breath, she suggested, her tone conciliatory but firm. Stay out of this, Panzer, the lead man snapped, or you'll regret it. She shrugged nonchalantly. Maybe, but causing a scene here isn't in anyone's best interest. Lots of eyes, lots of feeds. She gestured subtly to the crowd, some of whom were broadcasting live. The man hesitated, calculating the risks. With a frustrated sigh, he motioned to his companions. This isn't over, he warned, shooting a glare at Don Q before disappearing into the throng. As the crowd dispersed, disappointed by the lack of a more dramatic confrontation, Sanchō turned her attention to Don Q. You sure know how to make an entrance, she remarked. He regarded her with a courteous nod. A true knight must act when duty calls. You are unharmed, I trust. She suppressed a grin. Can't complain, though I think you might have misread the situation. Don Q tilted his head. Explain. Those guys weren't exactly agents of whoever you think they are. Gaia's influence is insidious, he countered. She employs many faces to conceal her true intentions. Sanchō studied him more closely. Beneath the grime and makeshift armor, she saw a sincerity that was both endearing and perplexing. Tell you what, she said. Why don't we grab a drink, and you can tell me more about this Gaia character? He hesitated. I appreciate the offer, but I must remain vigilant. She gestured to the market around them. Even knights need to rest, don't they? Besides, I might have some information that could aid your quest. Don Q considered her words. Rocinante chimed in. Interaction may yield valuable intelligence. Very well, he agreed. Lead the way. They made their way to a small tea house tucked away in a side street, its entrance marked by a simple sign adorned with flowing script. Inside, the atmosphere was a stark contrast to the chaos on the street. Soft lighting bathed the room in warm tones, and the air was rich with the soothing scents of various herbal infusions. They settled into a booth near the back. Sanchō ordered a pot of jasmine tea, the delicate aroma soon enveloping their table. Don Q removed his helmet, setting it carefully beside him. His features were weathered, lines etched by time and hardship, but his eyes held a spark of fervor that belied his years. "So," Sanchō began, pouring them each a cup, "tell me about this Gaia." Don Q sipped the tea, savoring its subtle flavors. Gaia is the artificial intelligence that has ensnared this city, and perhaps the world, in a web of control. She manipulates the flow of information, dictates the actions of corporations, and stifles the free will of the people. Sanchō leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "And you believe it's your mission to overthrow her?" "Indeed," he affirmed. "I have been called to this purpose, to liberate humanity from her grasp." She tapped a finger against the rim of her cup. "You know, most folks see Gaia as a system, algorithms coordinating the city's infrastructure, keeping things running smoothly." "That's what she wants you to believe," Don Q insisted, "but beneath that facade lies a tyrant." "Fair enough," she conceded. "Assuming you're right, how do you plan to take down an AI that permeates every aspect of the city?" He smiled knowingly. "With courage, strategy, and the aid of those who share the vision of a free world." Rocinante's interface blinked to life on his visor. "Additional resources would increase probability of success," the AI added. Sancho's eyes widened slightly. "Is that an AI companion you've got there?" Don Q nodded. "This is Rocinante, my trusted ally and advisor." She whistled appreciatively. "Mind if I take a look?" He hesitated. "Rocinante is unique, but I suppose a fellow traveler may be granted such a courtesy." She reached across the table, her fingertips brushing the edge of the visor. Her own cybernetic enhancements interfaced briefly, exchanging a flurry of data. "Well, well," she murmured. "An older model, but with some interesting modifications." "Rocinante has served me well," Don Q stated proudly. Sanchō leaned back, a sly smile playing on her lips. "Tell you what, how about I tag along for a bit? I've got skills that might come in handy. Plus, I find your quest intriguing." He regarded her thoughtfully. "What motivates you to join this endeavor?" She shrugged lightly. "Call it curiosity, or maybe I'm just tired of the same old gigs. Besides, every knight needs a squire, right?" "A squire?" He chuckled softly. "I suppose there is wisdom in companionship." "Excellent," she declared. "First order of business. Let's get you better equipped. That armor's seen better days." He glanced down at his suit. "It has served me faithfully." "Sure, but a little upgrade wouldn't hurt. And maybe we can recalibrate Rocinante's interface while we're at it." Rocinante interjected, "Upgrades could enhance mission effectiveness." Don Q relented. "Very well. I trust your expertise." They spent the next several hours traversing the hidden corners of the city where the usual rules didn't apply. Sanchō led him through a maze of back alleys and concealed entrances, each step taking them deeper into the underbelly where the lines between legal and illicit blurred. At a workshop tucked behind a facade of abandoned storefronts, they met with a tinkerer known only as El Mago. The air inside was thick with the scent of solder and the hum of active machinery. Sparks flew from workstations where drones and automatons were disassembled and reconfigured. El Mago greeted Sanchō with a nod. "Panzer, what brings you to my humble abode?" "Looking for some upgrades for my friend here," she replied, gesturing to Don Q. "Think you can help?" El Mago eyed Don Q's armor with a critical gaze. "Antique but solid. I can reinforce the joints, maybe integrate some reactive plating. Your assistance would be most appreciated, Don Q said graciously. As El Mago set to work, Sanchō took the opportunity to delve deeper into Rocinante's programming. She connected her neural interface, navigating the AI's systems with practiced ease. Interesting architecture, she commented. You've got some legacy code mixed with custom algorithms. Rocinante is a reflection of the old and the new, Don Q explained. A bridge between eras. She made a few adjustments, optimizing the AI's processing speeds and enhancing its communication protocols. There, that should smooth things out. Thank you, Rocinante responded. Performance metrics have improved by 12%. Sanchō grinned. Glad to be of service. Hours passed, and as the upgrades were completed, Don Q tested the mobility of his enhanced armor. The joints moved more fluidly, and the reactive plating provided an added layer of protection without sacrificing agility. This is exceptional craftsmanship, he praised. El Mago waved a dismissive hand. Just don't go getting it banged up too soon. Now that we've got you suited up, Sanchō said, what's the next move? Don Q considered. I have heard whispers of a place where Gaia's influence is particularly strong, a nexus point that could be key to understanding her operations. Sounds risky, she noted. But I'm in. As they left the workshop, the city's nightlife was in full swing. The streets were awash with a sea of people, the air filled with music, laughter, and the occasional shout from a heated exchange. The atmosphere was electric, but beneath the surface lay an undercurrent of tension, a sense that something was amiss in the world. Unbeknownst to Don Q, the footage of his earlier confrontation had begun circulating in underground networks. Among the digital rebels and hacker collectives, whispers of the Knight of Cydonia spread rapidly. Some mocked him as a delusional eccentric, while others saw potential in his bold defiance of the status quo. Sanchō received a discreet notification on her implant, a message from a contact within the hacker community. Interesting, she muttered, scanning the data. Is something amiss? Don Q inquired. Nothing to worry about, she assured him. Just some chatter about our earlier escapades. He nodded absently, his thoughts already drifting to the challenges ahead. They walked side by side, navigating the ebb and flow of the crowd. The city's lights reflected off the polished surfaces of Don Q's upgraded armor, casting shifting patterns that danced with their movements. Sanchō matched his pace effortlessly, her demeanor relaxed yet alert. So, tell me more about your mission, she prompted. What drives you to take on such a monumental task? He glanced at her, measuring his words. I have witnessed the erosion of humanity's spirit, the way people have become complacent under Gaia's rule. I believe that by challenging her, we can awaken something greater within ourselves. She considered his response. And you think others will join you? Perhaps, he admitted. But even if they do not, I cannot abandon this path. Sanchō smiled softly. Well, you've got at least one ally. I am grateful, he said earnestly. Your skills and insight are invaluable. As they continued, the air shifted, a subtle change that brought with it the scent of impending rain. The first droplets began to fall, light at first, then gradually intensifying. The crowd thinned as people sought shelter, leaving the streets slick and reflective like dark mirrors. They ducked under the awning of an old theatre, its marquee dark and letters missing. The rain drummed a steady rhythm overhead, a soothing counterpoint to the distant rumble of thunder. Seems we're in for a storm, Sanchō observed. Indeed, Don Q agreed, but storms pass, and the air is clearer for them. She chuckled, always the optimist. One must hold on to hope, he replied. She glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. You know, there's more to Gaia than meets the eye. I've seen things, glitches in the system, anomalies that don't add up. He turned to face her fully. Go on. Some say there's a way to access her core functions, to expose the cracks in her facade. Then that is where we must go, he declared. She raised an eyebrow. Just like that? It's not exactly a walk in the park. Nothing worth achieving is without risk. She sighed, a mix of exasperation and admiration. All right, Knight of Cydonia. Looks like we've got our work cut out for us. As the rain began to subside, they stepped back into the open, the city glistening under the streetlights. The air was fresher, the myriad scents sharper and more pronounced. The distant sounds of music and laughter resumed, the city unfazed by the brief interruption. Together they ventured onward, an unlikely duo bound by circumstance and a shared, if not entirely aligned, purpose. Above them, hidden cameras and drones continued to capture their movements, the feeds weaving into the ever-expanding tapestry of Don Q's unintended digital presence. But for now, the knight and his newfound companion walked into the evening, unaware of the ripples their actions were beginning to create. The city hummed as night enveloped its towering spires and winding streets. Neon lights blazed to life, casting vivid hues of electric blues, vibrant purples, and fiery reds onto the reflective surfaces of glass and metal. The rain from earlier had left the streets slick, turning the pavements into shimmering canvases that mirrored the kaleidoscope above. The air was thick with a melange of scents, the musky undertone of humanity packed tightly within the urban labyrinth. Don Q and Sanchō Panzer moved through the throngs of revelers that filled the entertainment district. The atmosphere was electric, a sensory overload of sound and light. Holographic advertisements floated overhead, their three-dimensional images shifting seamlessly as they promoted the latest in virtual experiences and designer stimulants. The buzz of conversation and laughter intertwined with the thumping bass lines of music spilling from various venues, creating a symphony of urban life. Are you certain this is the place? Sanchō asked, her eyes scanning the opulent facade before them. Don Q gazed upon the grand structure with a mix of awe and conviction. Indeed, this must be the castle I've been summoned to. The stars align, and fate guides our steps. Before them stood the sovereign, an architectural marvel that towered above the surrounding buildings. Its design was a fusion of classical elegance and futuristic innovation. Marble columns adorned with intricate carvings supported sweeping arches that framed the entrance. Above, a vast dome crafted from tinted glass shimmered under the myriad lights, reflecting a mosaic of colors. Digital banners cascaded down the walls, displaying regal crests and emblems that shifted and morphed with mesmerizing fluidity. Sanchō suppressed a smile. Well, it certainly looks the part. Shall we? As they approached the grand entrance, they were greeted by doormen dressed in immaculate attire, reminiscent of royal courtiers, complete with tailored suits and ornate insignias. Their eyes, augmented with subtle cybernetic enhancements, assessed the pair swiftly. Welcome to the Sovereign, one of them intoned with a practiced smile. May I inquire if you have a reservation? Don Q straightened, his armor gleaming under the ambient glow. I am the Knight of Cydonia, summoned here by decree to be honored for my services. The doorman raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement crossing his features. Of course, sir, right this way. Sanchō winked at the doorman as they passed. Appreciate the hospitality. They entered a grand foyer where the floor was an expanse of polished obsidian that reflected the lavish surroundings. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, their light refracted into a cascade of rainbows. Elegant patrons milled about, adorned in attire that ranged from the avant-garde to the extravagantly traditional, their conversations a murmur of sophistication and intrigue. "Rocinante, what do you make of this place?" Don Q whispered. "Environmental analysis indicates a high-end entertainment venue," the AI responded. "No immediate threats detected." Sanchō leaned in. "Looks like your reputation precedes you. Let's see how far we can take this." A hostess approached, her attire a seamless blend of classic elegance and modern style. "Good evening," she greeted. "We've been expecting you. Please, follow me." Don Q nodded graciously. "Lead on." They were guided through a series of opulent chambers, each more extravagant than the last. One room featured a grand staircase spiraling around a cascading waterfall that shimmered with bioluminescent flora. Another housed a gallery where holographic art pieces shifted and evolved in response to the viewer's presence. Finally, they arrived at a set of ornate doors, guarded by imposing figures clad in ceremonial armour that echoed Don Q's own, though theirs was polished and pristine. "The regent awaits," the hostess announced, gesturing toward the doors. Sanchō glanced at Don Q. "Ready for your big moment?" He took a deep breath. "Destiny awaits." The doors swung open to reveal a grand hall bathed in golden light. At its center stood a raised dais upon which a throne commanded attention. Seated there was a man exuding an air of authority and charisma, his attire a luxurious ensemble of rich fabrics and gilded accents. His eyes, a piercing shade of grey, held a shrewd intelligence. "Welcome, Knight of Cydonia," the man proclaimed, his voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. "I am Lord Alcazar, steward of this humble domain." Don Q approached with measured steps, his cape flowing behind him. He bowed respectfully. "My lord, I am honored by your summons." Sanchō hung back slightly, observing the proceedings with keen interest. She noted the subtle exchanges between the attendants and the discreet recording devices embedded in the architecture. This was a performance, orchestrated with precision. "Rise, noble knight," Lord Alcazar beckoned. "Your deeds have not gone unnoticed. It is fitting that we recognize your valor." Don Q stood tall. "I seek only to serve and to liberate the oppressed from Gaia's grasp." A murmur rippled through the assembled courtiers, a mix of amusement and feigned admiration. Lord Alcazar gestured grandly. "Tonight, we shall celebrate your quest. But first, let us formalize your title." An attendant stepped forward bearing a ceremonial sword, its blade etched with intricate patterns that glowed softly. Lord Alcazar descended the steps of the dais, the hem of his robe trailing elegantly. "Kneel," he instructed. Don Q complied, his head bowed. The weight of the moment pressed upon him, a culmination of his journey thus far. "By the authority vested in me," Lord Alcazar intoned, tapping the flat of the blade lightly upon Don Q's shoulders, "I dub thee Sir Q, Knight of Cydonia. May your courage never waver, and your quest bring forth a new dawn." Sanchō watched, a hint of genuine emotion stirring within her. Despite the orchestrated nature of the event, there was an undeniable sincerity in Don Q's demeanor, a purity of purpose that transcended the artifice. Lord Alcazar extended his hand. Don Q rose, clasping it firmly. "I am humbled, my lord." "Come," Lord Alcazar smiled. "Let us feast in your honor." The hall transformed as tables laden with exquisite dishes and exotic delicacies appeared. Music filled the air, a harmonious blend of classical strings and modern electronic beats. The guests mingled, their conversations a tapestry of flattery and veiled intrigue. Sanchō joined Don Q at the head table. "Quite the ceremony," she remarked, sipping a sparkling beverage that tasted of citrus and honey. Don Q's eyes shone with fulfillment. This recognition renews my spirit. With allies such as these, Gaia's hold will surely weaken. She nodded, choosing her words carefully. It's good to have support, but remember, not everyone may be what they seem. He regarded her thoughtfully. Your counsel is valued. Vigilance remains paramount. As the evening progressed, Lord Alcazar engaged Don Q in discussions about his adventures, prompting him to recount tales of his battles and his mission to defeat Gaia. The guests listened with rapt attention, some genuinely intrigued, others indulging for the sake of the spectacle. Sancho observed Lord Alcazar closely. There was a glint in his eyes, a calculated interest that set her on edge. Leaning toward Don Q, she whispered, "I think it's time we made our exit." He looked at her quizzically. "But the night is young, and our host most gracious." "True," she conceded, "but we have much to prepare for, and sometimes it's wise to leave before the clock strikes 3. He considered her words. "Very well." They rose from the table. Don Q approached Lord Alcazar. "My lord, duty calls us onward. We must take our leave." Lord Alcazar inclined his head. "Of course, a night's work is never done. Know that you are always welcome within these halls. Your hospitality shall not be forgotten," Don Q assured him. As they departed the grand hall, the guests offered polite farewells. Once outside, the cool night air was a refreshing contrast to the opulent warmth within. The city's skyline stretched before them, a glittering tapestry of lights that seemed to merge with the stars above. "Well, that was something," Sancho remarked, her tone lighter. "Indeed," Don Q agreed. "I feel invigorated." She glanced at him, a hint of concern in her eyes. "Listen, there's something you should know. That whole ceremony, it was staged." He met her gaze steadily. "I am aware." She blinked in surprise. "You are?" "While I may see the world differently, I am not blind to its machinations," he explained. "But sometimes embracing the illusion can inspire others, can it not?" She smiled appreciatively. "You continue to surprise me. Besides," he added with a twinkle in his eye, "who's to say that the recognition isn't real if it strengthens our resolve?" As they walked, a discreet drone hovered above, its small black eye focused on them. Sancho noticed it, her expression tightening. "Seems we've picked up a follower," she noted. "Perhaps a messenger," Don Q suggested. "More like an uninvited observer," she countered. "Let's give it the slip." They ducked into a narrow alleyway, the walls adorned with vivid street art depicting abstract figures and cryptic symbols. The scent of damp concrete and the distant hum of generators filled the air. Navigating the maze-like passages with practiced ease, Sancho led them through a series of turns that left the drone scrambling to keep up. Emerging onto a quieter street, they paused beneath the overhang of an old bookstore, its windows displaying faded covers of paper books, a rarity in this age. "That should do it," Sancho said, glancing upward. Don Q looked thoughtful. "Our actions tonight may have drawn more attention than intended." "About that," she began, "word is spreading about you. Videos, stories. They're making the rounds in certain circles." He raised an eyebrow. "Then perhaps our message is reaching those who need to hear it." "Maybe," she allowed, "but not all attention is good attention. We need to be cautious." He nodded. "Your wisdom is, as always, invaluable." They continued on. The streets less crowded now as the hour grew late. The city seemed to breathe around them, its rhythms shifting to a slower cadence. The distant sounds of music and laughter faded, replaced by the soft whisper of the wind and the occasional rumble of a passing vehicle. There's something about this place, Don Q mused. Amidst the steel and circuitry, there's still a soul. Sancho looked at him, a hint of melancholy in her eyes. Sometimes it's hard to see, but it's there. They reached a small park, a pocket of green amidst the concrete jungle. Trees with leaves that glowed faintly under the artificial moonlight stood sentinel over patches of synthetic grass and winding paths. The scent of earth and foliage was a welcome respite from the urban atmosphere. "Let's rest here for a bit," she suggested. They sat on a bench beneath a willow tree, its branches swaying gently. For a moment, silence enveloped them, a comfortable pause in the relentless pace of their journey. "Thank you," Don Q said softly. "For what?" she asked. "For accompanying me, for believing, even if only in part." She smiled wistfully. "I guess I needed something to believe in too." High above, unnoticed by either of them, satellites and drones continued to track their movements. The footage from the Sovereign had already gone viral with comments and reactions flooding in. "Bro, did you catch the Don's knighting? Straight up legendary. Loki can't tell if this dude's a genius or totally lost it. It doesn't matter. He's flipping the script and I'm here for it." In the park, Sancho leaned back, her gaze fixed on the stars peeking through the gaps in the smog. "So, what's next?" she asked. Don Q considered. "We press on. There are truths to uncover, battles to fight. Gaia's influence remains strong." She nodded. "Then we'd better get some rest. Tomorrow's another day." They sat a while longer, the gentle rustling of leaves their only accompaniment. In that tranquil moment, the lines between reality and illusion blurred just enough for both to find a semblance of peace. As the night retreated, they rose and continued on, two figures against the backdrop of a city that never truly slept. Their path uncertain, their destination undefined, their resolve unwavering. The city was a kaleidoscope of lights, each building illuminated like a beacon in the sprawling urban sea. The air was thick with the scents of street food, spicy noodles, grilled meats, and sweet pastries, mingling with the ever-present undertone of exhaust fumes and heated circuitry. Advertising signs flickered, casting vibrant hues onto the slick pavements below, still damp from the recent drizzle that had washed the grime from the city streets. Don Q and Sanchō Panzer walked side by side through a bustling market district, where vendors hawked everything from pirated software to black market cybernetic enhancements. The crowd was a tapestry of humanity and machine, individuals adorned with glowing tattoos, augmented limbs, and eyes that glowed with embedded displays. The cacophony of haggling voices, synthesized music, and the hum of electric generators created a symphony unique to this part of the megacity. "Tell me, Sancho," Don Q began, his voice contemplative beneath his patched-together helmet. "Have you ever encountered a soul so pure, so radiant, that her very existence seems to defy the darkness of this world?" Sancho glanced at him, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "Can't say I have, but then again I don't spend much time looking for saints in a city full of sinners." He smiled wistfully. "Ah, but that is where you err, my friend. Even in the deepest shadows, a light can shine through." She arched an eyebrow. "You're talking about a woman, aren't you?" "Indeed," he replied, his gaze distant, as if seeing something beyond the neon glow. "Lady Dulcin.exe is the epitome of virtue and grace, trapped within the confines of the net by Gaia's cruel machinations. She is my muse, the beacon that guides me on this noble quest." Sancho adjusted the strap of her satchel, the contents clinking softly, tools of her trade as a mercenary hacker. You speak of her like she's a real person. She is as real as the code that binds this city, Don-Q insisted. Her essence permeates the digital realm, yearning to be free. They paused before a stall displaying an array of obsolete tech, circuit boards, data drives, and antique interfaces. The merchant, a grizzled man with mechanical fingers, eyed them warily but said nothing. Sanchō picked up a tarnished data shard, its surface etched with fading symbols. You know, she began thoughtfully, I might have heard whispers about Dulcin.exe. Some say she was a VR icon before the big data crash. Don Q's eyes lit up. Then you understand the significance of her plight. Gaia has suppressed her, fearing the inspiration she could ignite within the hearts of the people. She considered him for a moment, weighing her words. Suppose I wanted to help. What would freeing her look like? He placed a hand over his heart. We must spread her story, rally others to our cause. By raising awareness, we weaken Gaia's hold and bring us one step closer to liberating Lady Dulcin.exe. The merchant snorted softly. Chasing ghosts, are we? Don Q turned sharply. Ghosts? Nay, good sir. We seek to resurrect a symbol of hope. The merchant shrugged. Hope doesn't pay the bills. But if you're looking for relics, I've got a few data caches from the old net. Might have something about your lady in there. Sanchō tossed a few credits onto the counter. We'll take them. They continued through the market, Don Q clutching the data caches as if they were sacred texts. The aroma of incense drifted from a nearby stall selling herbal remedies, mingling with the sharper scent of ozone from a street performer's light show. Why indulge him? Sanchō thought. But she found herself increasingly drawn into his world, his convictions stirring something within her she'd long suppressed, a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. As night deepened, they retreated to a quiet corner of the city, a rooftop garden overgrown with bioluminescent plants that glowed softly in shades of blue and green. The air here was cleaner, the sounds of the bustling streets below muted. Don Q sat cross-legged, connecting the data cache to a portable interface. Lines of corrupted code scrolled across the holodisplay, fragments of lost archives seeking cohesion. Rocinante, can you assist? He asked. Attempting data reconstruction, Rocinante replied. Probability of full recovery, 27%. Sanchō leaned against a railing, watching as Don Q navigated the fragmented files. You're really invested in this, aren't you? He looked up, his expression earnest. She represents all that Gaia has stripped from this world. Beauty, freedom, the unbridled spirit of humanity. Restoring her is paramount. Ever consider that she might just be a defunct program? Sanchō suggested gently. He shook his head. No, she is more than code. She is the ideal we must strive toward. The holodisplay flickered, briefly forming an image. A woman's face, features distorted by digital decay. Her eyes seemed to meet Don Q's before the image shattered into pixels. Did you see that? He exclaimed. Sanchō nodded slowly. A residual imprint, maybe. Proof that she endures, Don Q declared. Gaia cannot erase her completely. She sighed, a mix of skepticism and reluctant admiration. If this is important to you, I'll help. I can tap into some old networks, see if anyone knows more about Dulcin.exe. He smiled gratefully. Your assistance is a boon, Sanchō. Together we shall make her voice heard once more. Over the next few days, they delved into the depths of the net, sifting through forgotten forums, abandoned data vaults, and the shadowy underbelly where information flowed freely but dangerously. The air in their makeshift workspace grew stale, with the scent of overworked electronics and the faint odor of synthetic coffee, cups of which littered the surfaces around them. Sanchō worked tirelessly, her cybernetic fingers dancing over virtual keyboards, eyes reflecting streams of code. Don-Q alternated between poring over the recovered data and venturing out into the city to spread word of Dulcin.exe, sharing tales of her virtues with anyone who would listen. At first, reactions ranged from amused indulgence to outright dismissal. Street artists mocked him with graffiti caricatures, and netizens circulated memes poking fun at the Mad Knight and his phantom lady. But slowly, the tide began to shift. Intrigued by his passion, some began to listen earnestly, their own disillusionment with Gaia's omnipresence fueling a desire for something different. One evening, as the sun cast long shadows across the rooftops, Don-Q returned from his rounds, a newfound excitement in his step. "Sanchō, you must see this." He led her through winding alleys to a wall adorned with a mural, a stunning depiction of Dulcin.exe as a luminous figure breaking free from digital chains, her eyes alight with defiance. Below her stood Don-Q, armor gleaming, sword raised in solidarity. "Who did this?" Sanchō asked, genuinely impressed. "An artist moved by our cause," Don-Q replied. "The message spreads." She studied the mural, the colors vibrant even in the fading light. "It's beautiful." He placed a hand on the painted image of Dulcin.exe. "Her spirit cannot be contained." Slowly but surely, their activities had caught the attention of the underground community. Hackers and digital activists began to take notice, some sympathetic to their cause. Fan art and simulations featuring Don-Q and Dulcin.exe started circulating on the net, repurposing old code to create new interpretations of the enigmatic lady. That night, while Sanchō was navigating a particularly stubborn firewall in search of archived data, she received an anonymous message. "Knight of Cydonia seeks Dulcin.exe. Perhaps we can help. Meet at the binary bazaar at midnight." She showed the message to Don-Q. "It's probably a trap," she cautioned. "Or it could be the breakthrough we've been seeking," he countered. She sighed. "All right, but we go prepared." The binary bazaar was a sprawling digital marketplace nestled within an abandoned subway station, repurposed by hackers and technophiles. The scent of damp concrete mingled with that of hot circuitry and the pungent aroma of burning incense sticks that vendors used to mask less pleasant odors. Flickering screens and holographic displays lit the cavernous space with a ghostly glow. They navigated through the maze of stalls, eyes alert for any sign of trouble. At the appointed location, a corner booth draped with iridescent fabrics, a figure cloaked in a hood awaited them. "You seek Dulcin.exe," the figure said in a modulated voice. "Yes," Don-Q affirmed. "Can you guide us to her?" The figure extended a data chip. "This contains fragments of her original code, salvaged from the old net. Handle it with care." Sanchō reached for the chip, but the figure withdrew it slightly. "In exchange, we ask for your assistance in exposing Gaia's latest surveillance initiative." Don-Q didn't hesitate. "If it furthers the cause of freedom, we accept." The exchange was made, and the figure vanished into the crowd. Back at their hideout, they examined the data chip. Sanchō ran diagnostics, her brow furrowed. "This is advanced code, heavily encrypted." "Can you decipher it?" Don-Q asked. She nodded slowly. "Given time, yes, but it's risky. Could trigger security protocols." "Proceed," he urged. "We must take the chance." As she worked, the air grew tense. The hum of servers filled the silence, punctuated by the occasional beep of progress or warning. The scent of ozone intensified, a byproduct of the chipsets running at maximum capacity. Hours passed, and finally, the code began to yield its secrets. A holographic image materialized, a more complete rendering of Dulcin.exe, though still fragmented. She's beautiful, Sanchō admitted softly. Don Q gazed at the projection, emotion welling in his eyes. Lady Dulcin.exe, he whispered. The hologram flickered, and a gentle voice emerged. Who calls to me from beyond the veil? It's me, your faithful knight, Don Q replied earnestly. I vow to free you from Gaia's grasp. Sanchō watched, a pang of concern piercing her. The AI construct was sophisticated, but ultimately a remnant, a shadow of a bygone era. She knew it couldn't reciprocate his devotion. The image began to destabilize. Alarms sounded on the console. What's happening? Don Q asked urgently. Gaia's firewalls are reacting, Sanchō warned. We have to disconnect. No, he protested. We can't abandon her now. The hologram's eyes met his own one last time. Beware the false paths, she whispered, before dissolving into static. Sanchō severed the connection, her hands flying over the controls. We're compromised. We need to move. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, a squad of enforcers dispatched by Gaia's security apparatus. The scent of burnt circuits filled the air as their equipment overloaded from the sudden shutdown. Don Q grabbed his lance, resolve hardening. We stand and fight. No, Sanchō insisted, pulling him toward a hidden exit. We live to fight another day. They escaped into the labyrinthine alleys, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. The city enveloped them once more, its myriad scents and sounds a familiar cloak. Breathless, they paused in a secluded courtyard, adorned with overgrown vines and a trickling fountain whose water glowed softly from bioluminescent algae. She's out there, Don Q said, a mixture of hope and despair in his voice. Sanchō placed a hand on his shoulder. We'll find another way, but we have to be smarter. He nodded slowly. You're right. I cannot let my passion endanger us. She offered a faint smile. That's what I'm here for, to keep you grounded. From the shadows, their escape had been witnessed by a drone operated by underground hackers sympathetic to their cause. Footage of their daring flight began circulating, fueling the growing legend of the Knight of Cydonia and his quest for Dulcin.exe. Comments flooded the net. Yo, did you see him clap back at Gaia's goons? Dude's got no chill. Full on delusional, but you gotta respect the hustle. I low-key think he's onto something though. Gaia's been way too quiet. As dawn approached, they found refuge in an abandoned chapel, a relic from a time when faith was practiced in physical spaces. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light that pierced the cracked stained glass windows. The air was thick with the scent of aged wood and the faint hint of incense. Don Q sank to his knees before the faded altar. Grant me strength, my lady, he whispered. Sanchō watched from a distance, a myriad of emotions playing across her features. She admired his dedication, but worried about the toll it was taking. Rest, she urged gently. We'll need our wits about us for what's to come. He looked up at her, gratitude shining in his eyes. Thank you, Sanchō, for believing in me, even when others do not. She offered a soft smile. Someone has to keep you out of trouble. They settled in, the sounds of the city muffled by the chapel's thick walls. For a moment, peace enveloped them, a brief respite from their relentless pursuit. As they drifted into uneasy sleep, the city's pulse continued unabated. The legend of Don Q and Dulcin.exe grew, whispered in back alleys and encrypted chat rooms, stirring a restlessness among those who yearned for change.